Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Sig Tango MSR 1-6 LPVO. But before we get into the video, if you want to help us out, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free and does help us out quite a bit. On top of that, go ahead and comment literally anything down below. Now, if you don't know, Gun Deals is a website that provides you with links to some of the best products within the industry. So if you're interested in saving money on cool gear, go ahead and check them out. They don't buy or sell anything. All of the deals are posted by users and dealers alike. So again, if you're into saving money on cool gear, go ahead and check them out. That is gun.deals. Now, with all of that out of the way, full disclosure on the Sig MSR 1-6 is that we paid our own money for it. I believe we paid $279 from Euro Optic. So when it was initially released, you could see them around $250 to $300. Currently, they're just about out of stock everywhere, and the prices are, of course, going to go up just a little bit because they're harder to get right now. The reason that they're out of stock everywhere is a combination of supply chain issues and the fact that this scope is incredibly popular. And should be, because it is a very, very good option, if not the best option, if you're looking for a budget LPVO. So with that, let's go ahead and get into some of the boring specifications. So starting off with size and weight, we of course have an optic that is about 19 ounces, which is fairly decent for an LPVO. It's not the lightest, not the heaviest. It's right in the middle of the pack. That is just fine. It is about 11 inches long, which is again totally fine. Definitely not a short micro style LPVO, but it is not too bad either. We have a all aluminum construction, 30mm main tube, 24mm objective lens, finished in a very nice matte black anodization. We do of course have capped windage and elevation knobs, which is quite nice. That's what I like to see in LPVOs for the most part. Very nicely knurled. The illumination is done quite well. On the left side of the optic, we have an illumination knob that goes from 0 to 11. On 11, it's fairly bright, not quite daylight bright, but definitely daylight visible, and it is of course powered by a 2032. So when it comes to eye box and eye relief, it's stated at around 3.75 to 4 inches. However, this is kind of one of those weird LPVOs where the eye relief is actually quite long, and you're actually going to need to push it about as far forward as you can on your gun. So on most of my upper receivers, I have this mounted as far forward as I can without, of course, touching the rail or anything else like that, so where it's just mounted on the upper receiver, because it has a very long eye relief. So at 1x, the optimum place for me is like 4.5 inches to get the best 1x image, because of course this is a lot of panes of curved glass in here. So where your eye position is will actually change the perceived magnification. Even though it's at 1x, you can make the image look smaller or bigger by moving your head to different locations. But by having it a little bit further forward, I'm sort of making that image as natural as it can be, at least again for my eyes. So it does have very good eye relief, but that means you're going to be pushing it basically as far forward as you can. Now, talking about the eye box, the eye box itself, while good, is not necessarily the best that I've seen at 1x. It's still definitely usable, it's still good, again, but it's not quite as forgiving as some other LPVOs. Not really sure what causes that, but again, it is just something to note. When we flip it all the way up to 6x magnification, the eye relief is still, once again, very similar. It does tighten up a little bit, but on 6x on this optic, the eye box is very tight. So while it's a little bit tighter than I would like at 1x, at 6x it is fairly tight. So shooting from odd positions or from, just weird angles or something is going to be a little bit more difficult at max magnification on the Sig MSR 1-6. Still doable, still easy, but again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than with other LPVOs that have better, more forgiving eye boxes. So while the eye relief is great, the eye box itself leaves a little bit to be desired. Now, that being said, something that leaves nothing to be desired is the field of view. If you know my scale for field of view on an LPVO, at 1x, a good optic will have 100 feet of field of view. An excellent optic will have 110 feet of field of view at 1x. A phenomenal optic will have 120 feet of field of view at 1x. The Sig MSR Tango 1-6 has a field of view of 124 feet of field of view at 1x. That is not the best, but it is very darn close to it. It is in some very elite competition when it comes to field of view at 1x. Now, personally, I really like field of view. Field of view means that you get more of that magnified image, you get more of what you want at every magnification level. When you're at 6x, you get a proportional increase in your field of view. So I've mentioned this in other videos, but when you have a tight 1x field of view, it doesn't really matter all that much at 1x. Sure, it's a little bit harder to use, it's a little bit less preferable, but overall it doesn't make a big deal. But when you start cranking up on that magnification, you get less and less, versus if you start out with a huge field of view, even at 6x, I'm seeing more on this optic than I would with other optics at 4 or 5x. So not only do I get more magnification, I get more of it. I get to see more of that magnified image, more of what I want within the glass. So while that might be a trade-off with iBox, for me personally, I'll take the field of view and the situational awareness, whatever you want to call it, all day, every day. So eye relief, very good. iBox, okay. Field of view, excellent. Now let's go ahead and talk about the reticle. And the reticle is going to be a very interesting conversation. I think a lot of people are going to really like it. Personally, it leaves a tiny bit for me personally to be desired. It is basically very similar to the Strike Eagle Gen 2 reticle, which is very similar to the Burris RT6 reticle, which are all basically based off of the ACSS reticle. It's a very simple BDC reticle out to, I believe, 800 yards. However, the one downside with the MSR 1-6 is that they didn't label the distances like they did on every other LPVO in this price range. Not sure why they did it, but for me, when I'm shooting at, say, 500 yards, I actually have to count down to 500 yards instead of just seeing a 5 and knowing that's at 500 yards. It's a minor annoyance, but I'm not sure why they wouldn't just put the 4 and the 5 and the 6 and the 7 and the 8 at the appropriate lines so that you know exactly what that hash mark is that you're lining up on your target at, again, any given distance. That's really my only complaint with the reticle. Other than that, you have about a 2/3 horseshoe reticle around a 1 MOA center dot. 1 MOA center dot is plenty fast, plenty precise, and the only thing that lights up on this reticle is the horseshoe and the center dot. Now, as I mentioned, it doesn't quite get daylight bright, like fire hot, like the Vortex Viper, but it does definitely get daylight visible. So getting into the rest of the reticle, because of course this is a BDC reticle, a ballistic drop calculator reticle, or calculation reticle, however it is that you want to say it, there is a lot of stuff and a lot of capabilities within this reticle. So starting off, you of course have a semi-auto ranging feature. So at 6x magnification at 100 yards, you should be able to fit a human shoulders in between the circle portion around your center 1 MOA dot. At 200 yards, they will fill up half of that, and then at 300 yards, their shoulders should match up with the first 300 yard bar, and then 400, 500, 600, 700, so on and so forth. Now that's for the average male at a given distance, but again, it can kind of ballpark you into the right distance, which will in theory provide you a first round impact should the stars align, basically. Now on top of that, you also have windage holds. You have 5, so half value, and you have full value 10-mile-an-hour wind holds. Again, those aren't necessarily going to line up perfectly in every given situation. It's not a true Christmas tree reticle, but it does give you the ability to gauge where you should be aiming at a given distance if you know or kind of guess the approximate wind value across that distance. Now, another nice feature in this reticle that you don't necessarily see in a lot of them is it also has the arrows pointing either direction. Those are actually for movers. So Again, this isn't a first focal plane reticle, so this is going to be vary greatly depending on your magnification and your distance. But I believe at 100 yards, the first one is for 10 miles an hour and then 20, 30, and 40. So for instance, if you were tracking a car, say traveling parallel to you at 100 yards, depending if you had a general idea of its speed, you would have a general idea of where to hold. A pretty nifty little feature if you're sitting on a hilltop watching JFK go by. For the average person, probably not all that much useful. So personally, as far as a BDC goes on an LPVO on the MSR 1-6, I don't think I could fit any more acronyms in there. As far as all that goes, it's very good. The only thing that it's missing for me personally, so that I just don't have to count down how many I'm at, depending if I'm shooting at long range or not, is I would like them all to be numbered, so I know that this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, so on and so forth. That would be a little bit faster for my monkey brain to be able to pick up which one I should be using. Now, that being said, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the glass quality itself. Now, this is using overseas manufacturing. This is basic Chinese glass. I will say that the optical quality is very good for Chinese glass. It's going to be on par with basically every other Chinesium scope on the market in terms of its glass quality. You're going to get good clarity. You're going to get good light transmission. You're going to get, in this scope, there's a little bit of edge aberration, a little bit of distortion towards the end, maybe not what I would consider a fisheye effect, but you do get a little bit of warping towards the edge, probably a byproduct of that very large field of view. Overall, it is still the 99% usable, and so I don't consider that to be a drawback in any way. And again, if you're used to looking through budget glass, this is going to be very good. There's not a lot of chromatic aberration. There's not a lot of issues with the optical quality itself. It's just kind of standard for the price point, which is good. It's not going to blow away any of the competition, and it's not going to be blown away by any of the competition in this price point. It is just very good. So to quickly reiterate on everything that we've gone over so far, we of course have very good eye relief, an okay eye box, phenomenal field of view, decent glass, and a near perfect reticle. So overall, we're very, very good. Maybe 8.5, maybe 9 out of 10. A couple very small fixes, and we could be at a perfect budget LPVO. Now, getting into some of the nice external features, and this is something on this optic that does go above and beyond basically every other budget LPVO on the market. So this does come with their Alpha-MSR mount. Now, the thing that I like about their mount, and the thing that I believe that they did right, was first off, it's a very nice cantilever mount, 6061 aluminum, very standard, has good material removed, good weight cuts. I believe it weighs 4.5 or 5 ounces, so the total package here is 24 ounces, which for a 1-6 LPVO with this feature set, it's not bad whatsoever. Again, it's not heavy, it's not light, it's pretty much in between, but it does, of course, come with this very nice mount. So on top, they print exactly what your torque needs to be for these screws. That is awesome. I wish every mount had those exact sort of things printed on them, so dummies like me don't strip something out. So on top, 25 inch-pounds for all of your ring screws. On your cross bolts, a whopping 65 inch-pounds. That is excellent. If I can get 65 inch-pounds on all of my scope mounts, I will be very, very happy. On top of that, we do have 2 steel cross bolts. They are true steel on steel action, so they're compressing a large aluminum locking block basically into the side of your upper receiver. Very, very good. You are able to get a huge amount of pressure over a wide surface area, providing good clamping force. That's what I like to see with steel hardware. On top of that, both of the cross bolts are squared off. Actually, I can show you that right now. I can just take it off of here, I think, because this is just mocked up on one of my Mark IV upper receivers. It hasn't actually been shot on the Mark IV. It's just been sitting there for quite some time. So on the bottom here, we of course have both of our cross bolts that are squared off, which makes them act like recoil lugs. What recoil lugs do is they will create additional contact surface between your optic and your upper receiver. So when you're mounting it, you want to push down and forward, then tighten down, and that's going to create the most possible contact surface, locking surface between your upper receiver and your mount, causing the greatest potential for it to hold 0. Now, with this optic, I used it a lot on my Recce Pro. I did take it out to 500 yards without much issue whatsoever on just a 13.7. On top of that, I've used it on every other gun that I've tested, 4 gun deals. So I believe the Durkin 16, the Lead Star Arms, and was there another one in there? There might have been another one in there. So I've tested this on at least 4 or 5 different guns. It's performed flawlessly in all of them. No shift in 0 whatsoever. And the reason I use it so much is because it's just a very pleasurable, very nice optic to use. So the mount itself, I think they did a very good job. I don't have any complaints about the mount itself whatsoever. And remember, for that price tag of around $250 to $300-ish, it comes with the mount. Now, the other mounts the other optics that's kind of in that same price point is going to be the Vortex Strike Eagle Gen 2s, both of which I've reviewed on my personal channel, both of which have done excellent, both of which I recommend. They're going to be in that same price category. However, they're not quite as nice, very, very close. Not quite as nice. This one here has a little bit better field of view. It has a better mount, in my opinion. There is a couple nice other features on here. We actually have a dedicated line, an alignment line that will help you to get your optic balanced properly, so it's not canted left or right, so that it is balanced properly in your mount. And so again, you can line up that BDC much easier and it's not canted one way or the other. I wish they would have this feature on basically every optic on the market. However, a lot of the times, without realizing it, a lot of optics are going to be slightly canted one way or the other. So you'll balance it off of the optic body and then you'll look through it and you'll be like, hey, wait a second, it's canted at like 5 or 10 degrees this way. So it is something that is nice to see, and something about this MSR as well is that this one here is slightly canted. So for where it is on the rings, it actually needs to be like towards the top end of balance to be perfectly flat within the glass. So there is like 1 degree, half degree, 1 degree off of the reticle from being perfectly straight up and down. Not a big feature, no, not a big issue, just something to mention. A really nice thing on the magnification ring is that it does come with a built-in throw lever. It is removable if you don't like throw levers for whatever reason. Personally, I do, so I Loctited it down and forgot about it. Another incredible feature, a nice little touch that they did with this, is that it has a fiber optic insert in your magnification lever that points to whatever magnification that you're at. So when you're behind this, say this is mounted up on your gun, especially outdoors where it's, of course, you have the sunlight, direct sunlight, that glows fire bright in your periphery, so you know what magnification you're at all times. Not necessarily needed, but it is just a very nice touch. On top of that, it does come with probably the best scope caps in the price category. Again, not really needed, but it's just a really nice touch. So, in terms of price to performance, like I said, this may be the best new budget scope on the market. It's performed very, very well for me. I like the reticle, I like the glass, I love the huge field of view. The other features and niceties about this optic mount combo are really just icing on the cake. Overall, it is very, very good. And again, if we're really gonna limit our budget range to, let's say, really narrow that down to the $250 to $300 price range, we have this optic mount combo. We have the Strike Eagle Gen 2 optic and mount combo again around. Maybe you can get them under $300 with a mount. I know you can get them under $200, or sorry, under $250 without a mount, but with a mount, I think you're still going to be in that $250 to $300 price category, and probably the Burris RT6 as well. I believe those are the only 3 that I can think of that are sub $300 with a mount with all of these features as well. There's probably a couple others that I'm not thinking about. There might be a Riton in there, a Riton, however you say that, plus an Adaball or something. Those I have not tested, but from the ones that I have tested, this is really close to being the best. I'm not sure if it's going to be the best for everyone, because some people might prefer having a more forgiving eye relief, or sorry, eye box, and they'll sacrifice that field of view to get that. For me, the trade-off is I'd probably prefer that field of view and sacrifice a little bit on the eye box. So again, that's going to be up to every individual person. Personally, you can't go wrong with this or the Strike Eagle Gen 2s. They're both going to serve you very, very well. The warranty on both is lifetime, no questions asked. I have dealt with Sig's customer service one time, and it was a very pleasurable experience. They're actually just south of me in Oregon, so they're actually only a couple hours down the road. But overall, it's an excellent scope if you're looking at it. If it's back in stock by the time this video posts or sometime in the future, it's definitely worth a buy at that $300 and under price category. If it comes back and they raise up the price and it's like 400 bucks, then I would start looking at other options. But again, when we're really narrowed down to that $300 and under price category, it's really, really hard to beat. So with all of that out of the way, guys, I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys want to see next in the LPVO sort of series, whether it's a 1 to 6, 1 to 8, or 1 to 10, because that does have a 1 to 10 big brother, which we may talk about very soon. But with all of that out of the way, guys, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace off. Little too softly gassed for steel case ammo to lock back. Maybe I should put a lighter buffer in there. I'm not sure exactly what I'm working with.